Hey there, and welcome to the module on evaluating your charter school leader. My name is Mike Mazzoni. I am the Chief Governance Officer here at Board on Track. For those of you who don't know us, Board on Track is a national organization that supports and works with charter school boards around the country, supporting their efforts in good governance. What we're going to cover right now are the steps that you can take with your team for a successful school leader evaluation process. One of the most important things that a charter school board can do to make sure that they're living up to their accountability promises that they've made in their charter with their authorizer in that charter contract. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into these key steps that you and your team can take for that effective end of the year evaluation. One of the things that we always say here at Board on Track is that knowledge plus action equals results. So in a couple different ways, one of the things I really want to encourage you to do is to review the webinar training sessions, but then also to go out and use some of the resources and supports that are available through WRCCS to put some of this knowledge into action with your team. Also, taking this analogy a little bit further, one of the things that's key in these evaluation steps that you'll see is that they are really designed to be forward-looking to help move your organization forward. So as you'll see, this evaluation is designed, like the analogy I like to give, is that you and your team, right, you and your board and your school leader and all of your staff are in a car together and you're driving this thing down the road, right? You're in a bus, you've got a destination that you've agreed you're heading to, and you've got everybody on your team on that bus. Well, the evaluation itself that collects the data should just be a small portion of what it is that you're reviewing as part of how you know where you're going. So you oftentimes want to briefly look back to see where it is that we've come, but then you want to use this evaluation primarily like the rest of the windshield to help influence where it is that you're going from here. So don't get too caught up in the knowledge, the data part. What's really key is that you actually take the data from your evaluation and put it into work to help influence the work of your organization going forward. All right, so the first step here is to get structured for success, to form a committee that's actually going to be the ones managing this process throughout the year. We like it to be a committee that's either the school leader support and evaluation committee or the CEO support and evaluation committee that actually manages this process. Because as we've talked in other training sessions, this should be an annual process and not just a one-time of year event where at the end of the year you do an evaluation. There should be a small cohort of the board that works with the school leader to set goals and to work with them throughout the year to check in on how that CEO or the school leader is making progress towards those goals. So it's important to meet a couple times throughout the year to see what kinds of things the board can be doing differently to support the school leader and to make sure that there are no surprises at the end of the year when the evaluation is actually conducted. So the first step to take, if you haven't already done so, is to go out and create your support and evaluation committee. Ideally, this committee is composed of at least 3 people. It's great to have the board chair on this committee. It's also great to have people with HR experience, employee relations experience, somebody who's done employee reviews in the past. And then ideally, there's a third person there who can chair the committee. I like to put here that it ideally should not be chaired by your board chair for a couple of reasons, not the least of which is that your board chair and your school leader will likely have a closer partnership, a more in-depth partnership than the rest of the board. So it's great for the board chair to be on that committee to bring their perspective, but just to provide a little bit of separation and a little bit of objectivity, it's great to have somebody else leading that committee's efforts. If you haven't done so already, feel free to grab the template that is part of the WRCCS resources and create a support and evaluation committee for your team. The next thing is going to be to develop the timeline for your evaluation process. Again, this is something that should be driven and owned by that committee or that task force once it's created. The best way to develop this timeline is to map backwards from when it is that you want the evaluation to be concluded. So go ahead and think about when is the best time for your team to do this. Ideally, what we want to do is to set some time over the summer where we want the evaluation to be completed by. So for example, if you know you're going to have a planning meeting in August, you may want to make that the deadline. I always recommend that the best time to do the evaluation is as close to the end of the school year as possible. You don't want to wait too long throughout the summer so that you're now focusing on the next school year, right? Because like I said, going back to that windshield analogy, the evaluation itself really is just part of this. You want to make sure you're having time to document how the evaluation data is going to influence next year. So what you want to make sure is that you're close enough to the school leader, the school year ending, that it's still fresh in your mind. You don't want to do it during the school year or too close to being part of that school year. So, sometimes in February or March, there's not enough data from this school year so far to do an effective evaluation. So it tends to be that the June timeframe tends to be the best time. School is just let out, still fresh in our mind, and we really haven't turned gears yet thinking about next year. Make sure you get input from your school leader, again, making sure that it's going to work within their timeline and the busy school year calendar that they're managing. Once this is agreed upon, the committee, this task force, should tell it to the full board, here's what we have in mind, and get the full board to adopt that or vote on it and say, yes, this is the process we're going to do this year. It's great to have that kind of discussion early in the school year. So if you haven't done an evaluation yet or ever, it's great to agree in the September, October, November timeline that come the spring, we're going to do this. So it's a great activity for the fall to bring to your board to agree that in this next spring, we're going to do an evaluation, bring that to the full board to get voted on. The next step 3, is to select the evaluation tool that you are going to use for the evaluation. The important thing here is select a tool. Do not reinvent the wheel. There have been a lot of experts and a lot of your peers around the country who've gone through this before you and have taken a good stab at developing the kinds of questions that a school leader should be asked as part of this evaluation. So make sure that you find a tool that works for your team. Ideally, you want to find a charter school specific tool, again, because you want it to be as specific to your specific characteristics as possible and the kinds of needs and challenges that are different to a school leader than, say, a traditional district superintendent. Then the next thing is, once you've established this tools, you want to make sure you orient your full team to how the tool is going to work. Is it a 360 evaluation tool? Is it an online tool where someone's going to need to log in? Are you going to ask the staff or any direct reports to participate? You want to make sure that before you go out and implement the tool, that you orient the full team to what it is that this tool is and how it works. Next, you want to make sure that you have the specific metrics or goals or data points that you're going to reflect upon in evaluating your school leader. So what additional data points are you going to include that go beyond those generic questions that are pulled from the evaluation tool that you select? So again, you're going to grab a CEO or a school leader evaluation template or a tool that has questions that people recommend. But in addition to that, you want to say, are there any other data points that we want to include in our evaluation that might be very specific to us? So things like those specific charter promises. Are there any unique charter promises that you've made that you need to focus on in your evaluation? What kind of assessment data do you have as an organization? Are there interim academic assessment data that you can reflect upon? Another really important thing is stakeholder evaluation. So down here on the 4th arrow, I have annual parent, student, staff satisfaction surveys. These are all really important things that, again, get to specifically how your school leader is organizing the work within your school or your organization. Great way to think about this, both for the board, but also for the school leaders themselves, is that you're actually developing a professional portfolio. So on an annual basis, if the school leader is being evaluated on academic performance, you should develop a portfolio that has the data or the evidence of those gains in academics. So now actually kicking off the evaluation, the first step in the evaluation itself is for the school leader to do their self-evaluation, their self-reflection. Always recommend that the leader completes their self-evaluation before the board does. It's really great to be able to, as a board, decide whether you want to use that self-evaluation data as one of the data points for the board's evaluation. So as as often is done with many evaluation tools, employee evaluation tools, is that the board is going to actually reflect on the school leader's self-evaluation and see how do they think they did. And that might be one way to influence the board's evaluation. So you want to make sure as part of that timeline that you set a date by which the school leader is going to complete their evaluation. Then, like I said, you want to also then, as long as you've decided to do this, we recommend sharing that leader's evaluation with the full board as an additional data point. The next step then is that the board, everyone else who's actually evaluating the school leader is going to do their evaluation. You see here that I say the board and direct reports. At a minimum, it's important that the full board completes their evaluation of the leader by that agreed upon deadline. So you're going to ask everybody to submit their information, and then that's going to be aggregated. Another thing that you should consider is whether or not you will ask your direct reports to participate in the evaluation as well. So many schools, we recommend it as a best practice that you take the 2, 3, 4 employees who work very closely with the school leader. Maybe they're the direct reports, maybe they're a budget manager or another academic lead. Anybody who works really closely with the school leader and might be able to give the board members a peek into what it's like working with the school leader day to day within the school. Again, that's a question that each organization and each board needs to make for itself. So be sure as you're planning out this process to work with your school leader and to identify whether or not, and if so, which direct reports will be included in the evaluation itself. Now that everybody has weighed in, so the school leader has done their self-evaluation, the direct reports, if any, have weighed in. Now the full board has taken their evaluation, and so now we've got all this data, right? The important thing to do now, going back to the notion of knowledge plus action is how we get results for charter school or for charter schools. The next step is to actually take this data, what are the results of the evaluation, and how do we want to make sense of it to put this data into action. So as you see here, the board's going to take all of this aggregated data and they're going to say, what is this data telling us? And once they've agreed to what it is that the data is telling the organization, the board's going to digest it and agree to speak with one voice. So again, if you remember, one of the tips that I have is that you don't actually turn over a raw report just filled with data to the school leader because it doesn't necessarily tell the story that the board has agreed to tell. So again, the purpose of this is for the board to work with the school leader to influence the work going forward. So it's really important that you don't just take an evaluation that may or may not tell the right story. You want that evaluation results, that data, to influence how the board is going to respond. And that brings us to step 8, which is actually creating a memo that's going to document what it is that the process we went through, the results of the memo, and documenting it with the board actually voting on it. So that evaluation committee, that leader support and evaluation committee, should take the lead to say, now that we've got all this data, here's what we think this means for our organization. Here are the things that we think the school leader does really well that we want to see going forward. Here are the things, the couple areas that we think the school leader could potentially improve upon and what those things may look like. And as included at the bottom of this, you could consider incorporating your documented goals for the year ahead. So the school leader support and evaluation committee drafts a memo, brings that memo to the full board so the full board can review it, and then the full board votes on it to say, yes, this is the message that we want to convey to our school leader. Once the board's agreed on that, it's really important that you actually meet with the school leader to talk about what it is that this story is, what it is that the board wants to tell to the school leader as far as feedback goes. I typically recommend that this is not something that's done as a full board at the full board meeting. Again, the board has had a couple opportunities to weigh in, and then ideally it's a smaller subset, that school leader support and evaluation committee, who actually meets in person with the school leader to share the feedback that the board has given. And last but certainly not least, the next step here, again, knowledge plus action, is to say, now that we have all of this information, what is it that we're going to do? How are we going to put this data into action for the year ahead? So it's really important that you reflect on the things that the school leader did well, the areas that you want the school leader to improve upon. What are those key things that need to get done for the organization in order to stay on track for year renewal? And document those as goals. As you can see in the second bullet here, going back to the notion of this being an annual process and a cycle, these goals that you've now documented and incorporated in the memo itself that the board has voted on become the goals in one of those data points that you're going to evaluate your school leader upon at the end of this next year. And those will be the goals that this committee has as its check-ins throughout the school year with the school leader itself. So just to summarize these action steps for you, the very first step in conducting a really effective and efficient end of the year charter school leader evaluation is to get yourself set up for success and form that committee to run the process. Next, that committee is going to go out and work with the board and the school leader to develop a timeline. In addition, they're also going to select, again, partnering with the school leader, they're going to select the evaluation instrument that's going to be used. Once the timeline is set, the tool's been selected, the first step in the actual evaluation itself is for the school leader to do a self-evaluation. That's going to be shared with the board so that the board and the leader's direct reports can go off and do their evaluation of the school leader. Once that's been completed, you want to discuss whether there are any other additional data points that need to be included in the evaluation itself. You're going to discuss these results with the full board. What does it mean? How do we agree to speak with one voice? That gets documented in a memo that's going to actually be shared and voted on and shared with the school leader. Once that's done, we're going to hold this in-person meeting where we're going to actually discuss with the school leader, what does this memo mean? Is there any pushback that the school leader would like to give? Is there anything else that we want to align on for last year? Because what we ultimately want to conclude with is by taking this memo and creating our goals and an action plan for the year ahead. Ideally, this is all concluded over the summer so that it's something that the school leader can start working towards with the organization and the staff for the year ahead. So thank you so much for watching this. I hope that if you do not have an effective evaluation process for your school leader, that you'll start implementing one today. As always, feel free to go and jump into the resources and supports that are part of the WRCCS modules, including, again, that school leader support and evaluation committee job description, as well as a sample memo that you can use to help document your school leader's evaluation going forward. Thanks so much for watching and good luck.